Hi everyone and welcome to Curly and Yarny. As always, my name is Milena and in today's video, I'm actually starting a 3-part series in which I will be weaving Overshot. So let's get started. So a few months back, I warped my converted Meko Loom in order to be weaving Overshot. So I warped a warp that was long enough for 2 scarves. So the way that I'm going to break down the video series is that the first video, which is today's video, I'm going to be explaining what Overshot is, and I'll be giving you some tips on how I like to do it, especially for my treadles. Then in the second video, I'm going to be talking about the first scarf, and of course in the third video, I will be talking about the second scarf. So Overshot is intricate, but it's not that hard, but of course it's not that beginner friendly either. So today's video might be aimed at people who are a bit more advanced or at people who are beginner but are just curious to learn more about this technique. But for that reason, I'm not going to go over the threading of the loom because in the making of this video, I actually assumed that you would be comfortable with reading a threading draft and you would be comfortable with threading your loom according to it. So you might be thinking, what is Overshot? So Overshot is a weaving structure that is very particular because it combines plain weave and twill together, and the way that it is drafted, it can create amazing patterns that are seems very intricate. Typically, when you would want to weave Overshot, the way that it would work, you would have and I would say typically because there's always way to play around with this and make it your own, but normally what you would do is that you would warp your loom with one color in the warp, so no stripes, just one plain color. Then when it comes to the weaving, we would be weaving with 2 different weft yarns. So we'd have one weft yarn that is similar to the warp. It can be either the same yarn or something else, but always something very similar because this yarn will kind of camouflage in the weaving. Usually we'll use a yarn that is quite small in weight. And then for the second yarn, which would be the pattern yarn, we would normally want something that is contrasting in color, so something that is very different from the warp and this other yarn, but we would also want something that is bigger in terms of weight. So this way, when we would be weaving, we really want to see this yarn more. So this one is the camouflage one, this one is the one that we really want to pop out. So it will pop out both because of its color, but also because of its size. For example, right now on the loom, my warp is 8-2 cotton. My yarn here is also 8-2 cotton, so the same weight as the warp. And for my pattern weft, I have choose some 8-4 cotton, so it is bigger and also the color is much more contrasting. So this one is a dark navy, so since that it is much darker and the warp and this yarn are much lighter, we can see it even more on the weaving. So in the weaving, we will alternate the 2 shuttles. So one pick will be done with this yarn, the next one with this one, then this one and this one, and so on. So this tabby yarn will always be weaving tabby, and this one, the pattern yarn, will always be weaving the pattern. So as easy as that. Alright, so first let's just take a look at the mechanics, so just to understand the flow of the shuttle. So now I am about to weave one pick of tabby, like that, and now one pick of pattern weft. And then again one other pick of tabby. And then for the pattern, I decided to go back to my Bible, the Dixon pattern directory, and I did the Overshot pattern that is called a small honeysuckle. So this one can be found on page 105. If you have the book, you might notice that the same threading can be found on different pages, but what would change would be the threadling. So for the first scarf, I will be doing the threadling here in the middle of the page, but for the second one I might change it up, but just know that for the first one, if you do the 105 threading with this threadling, we still have the same effect. I also think that if you want to give a shot to Overshot, pun intended, this is a good one to start with because I find the threadling to be pretty straightforward. So it might look complicated, but when you start weaving it, it actually makes a lot of sense because you often repeat the same 3 threadling in a row, and that really makes a lot of sense when you do it. We'll see that a bit more in details when we start weaving the project. So this particular Overshot pattern is calling for a 4-shaft loom, but this loom will need to have 6 treadles. Alright, so first let's look at how they attach their loom here. So they do a proposition of how to attach the treadles. You don't have to do it this way. I didn't do it this way, but it's a good starting point to start with. So first they attach shaft 1 and 3 on the treadle 1, then shaft 2 and 4 on the treadle 2. This means that those treadles will be the treadles used in order to weave the plain weave. Then they attached the 4 other treadles in the same way that we would attach for a balance twill, and so on treadle 3 they attach shaft 1 and 2, on treadle 4 they attach for 2 and 3, then on treadle 5 for 3 and 4, and then on treadle 6 for 1 and 4. So if we go back now to the threadling, you might notice that they only wrote the threadling in a part where we see the twill area, so not the part where there's the plain weave. So this might be very confusing, but so they've decided not to mention when they weave the plain weave, so it's not written, but it is there. So us weavers, we need to be able to assume that in between each of those picks there is always one pick of plain weave that it is woven, but it doesn't matter which one, we just need to alternate them, that's all. So now let's decipher the threadling together, because if you haven't looked at this draft before, it might look very intimidating because you have a few trees there and might be wondering, what does that mean? What am I supposed to do with that? So here's how we are going to read this draft. So first of all, most drafts are read from the bottom to the top, which is a little bit counterintuitive from the way that we read in general life, but that's the way to do in weaving because this is the order that we're going to weave the picks. All the way down here, the first pick is woven with a treadle number 3. So if I were to attach my loom exactly the same way here, I would start by doing a pick in the treadle 3. Then the second one is done with the treadle 4, then 5, and then here it says 3 for the treadle 6. So I'm going to write 6, 6, 6. So this means that I will push on the treadle 3, weave 1 pick of plain weave, treadle 4, 1 pick of plain weave, treadle 5, 1 pick, and so on. It's the same thing over here. So it might be counterintuitive to think, am I really going to push on the 6 treadles 3 times in a row? Is it really going to weave? And yes, it will, because there will be plain weave in between. So it will be plain weave 6, plain weave 6, plain weave 6, and you'll see it will work. Then if we keep making our way here, it says that we're going to push 3 times on the treadle 3, so it will be 3, 3, 3. Then again 3 times on the treadle 4, so it will be 4, 4, 4. Then yet again 3, 3, 3. After that, over here it's 3 times on the treadle 6, so 6, 6, 6. And then once on the 5 and once on the 4, and then we start all over again. So this is one good way to be reading the draft. However, I did it a little bit differently, and in order to really understand it, let's go underneath the loom and take this cat off of my scarf. Let's take a look at the treadles. So my loom has 6 treadles, and so far I've mostly been using the 4-1 in the middle, because on this loom so far I have mostly woven twill or a variation of twill, so those were the only one I needed, and it's fun to be weaving centered, so this is why I never did 1, 2, 3, 4, for example. So I've always stayed with the 4-1 in the middle. This pattern, as I mentioned, calls for 6 treadles, so I needed to attach this one and this one also. In order not to confuse myself too much, I've decided that the 4 center one would stay 1, 2, 3, 4. So I will be weaving tabby with the left one and the right one, and I'll have an assistant while doing so. So and I've said tabby left because it's on the left, and tabby right because it's on the right. And I haven't written that only for the treadle, but also for the shuttle. So whenever my shuttle is on the left, this is when I will push on tabby left, and when my shuttle is on the right, I will push on tabby right. So this way, I won't even have to think about those. I don't even have to label them with a number. They are just left and right, and the numbers I'm used to stay here. So here, this is what we did earlier at the beginning of the video if we were to follow exactly this same sequence. And now this is what I actually did and follow. So those are numbers I know, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I did, I basically just ignored the 2 first columns, so those 2 tabby treadles, and I only focus on the 4 treadle here and follow them according to the pattern here. So as simple as this. I like doing the attachment of my treadles this way because I feel like this is my foolproof method. However, I know that some people like the other way, so the way that was proposed by the book, because this would make a lot of sense with the footing with the treadles. So for example, when doing the treadling, your left foot would always be doing the tabby, and then the right foot would always be doing the pattern weave. So I think the bottom line is do whatever works best for you. So now for the pattern yarn, for this I really need to follow the sequence of my treadling. It says that the first pick I need to do is with the treadle 1. So for me, treadle 1 is the one that's usually the one no matter what kind of pattern I'm doing. So basically now it would be the second one on the left. So I weave that one pick. My tabby weft is on the left, so I can weave that pick. And I beat. Now I'm back to the pattern yarn again, and on the pattern it says I'm ready to weave a pick with the second treadle. So I pick, so now I can push on my treadle number 2, which is the third one on the left. One pattern pick done, I need to do one pick with the tabby yarn. It's on the right, so I will push a treadle that is the outmost on the right. I throw it in, I beat. Now I can weave according to the pattern with the pattern yarn a pick with the third treadle, so that would be the fourth one starting from the left. Tabby yarn on the left, I throw it in, I beat. And now we get to the part that's interesting, because now we got a treadling that tells me that I need to push 4 times on the treadle 4. So that's the easiest part, so I don't even have to think so much. So first of all, I will do my first pick with my pattern yarn. So treadle 4, which is the 5th one on starting from the left. Now I need to go back to the 4th. And then in a third time, the pick 4. And now I'm weaving 3 times 1. And now 3 times 2. And now back to weaving 3 times 1 again. Now it's 3 times 4. And my final 2 picks are 3 and 2. And there we have woven the whole repeat. So even though Overshot can come with a recipe, as I mentioned, so we have the warp and the tabby yarn that are similar, then you have the pattern yarn that is different. Well, you don't necessarily have to do this exactly this way. So this is your loom, your project, so you can always try to venture out and try new things. Sometimes you can make great discoveries doing this. So for example, you could use a pattern yarn that is super big, and you could maybe also use a tabby yarn that is the color different from the warp, and I'm sure that you could make fun discoveries. So I'm basically giving you maybe like the base recipe, as if I was giving you the recipe for a vanilla cake, but then it's up to you if you want to add the chocolate chip or some icing or some sprinkle on it. So really, you can be very creative with this kind of thing. You could even venture out of the book. You could try your own threadling. You can even give a shot, again, pun intended, give a shot to your own threading. So really there's a lot of fun to be done with Overshot. So this would be it for today's video. So by weaving the scarf a little bit during the video, I hope I got you hooked. Because in a few weeks I will be posting the part 2 of this series, where I will be actually talking about the scarf and finishing the weaving of it. So stay tuned for that. This will surely be very interesting. So thank you so much for being here with me today. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and see you soon. Bye bye.